Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. Developments in Nigeria's security sector in the last 2 weeks have generated concerns amongst Nigerians, with the opposition lawmakers in the National Assembly threatening an impeachment of President Muhammadu Buhari and issuance of a 6-week ultimatum to address the problem. On the other hand, the Nigerian government and its security agencies are also strategizing to respond to the deteriorating security situation in the country. As the terrorist groups intensify their deadly campaigns against the state and its agents, we ask, is the non-state actors' recent audacity to take on our security forces and institutions a sign that they are not as technically defeated as the government consistently claimed? What has happened to our intelligence and tactical response to the security emergency? Is there a solution in sight? These and many more questions will form the basis of our discussion on the platform. And joining us to discuss these issues, we have in the studio the former spokesman of the Nigerian Army, Brigadier General Sani Usman Kukashega. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on your program.
It's good to have you once again.
Thank you.
We also have a security and intelligence expert, Kabiru Adamu, who will be joining us shortly. And finally, joining us via Zoom is a public affairs analyst, Lama Bukaldi. They will be giving us their perspectives on the issues. Thank you for joining us, Bulama. Right, okay, so let's take a short break. As we return, the discussion commences. Thank you very much for staying with us. It's daily politics and the discussions about to commence. Just like I said, our talking point today is, of course, looking at security developments in Nigeria. Let me start with you, retired general. You know, looking at the current situation in the country, we were here some days ago, you know, to talk about this same problem, talking about security. But then, between then and now, there has been some developments that have generated a lot of concerns among Nigerians. One in particular is, of course, the recent attack on our troops of the guards of brigade, the brigade guards here in Abuja, who were ambushed, by some terrorist groups, along Buhari general area. Unfortunately, there are casualties, So Nigerians are beginning to worry, especially residents of Abuja, looking at the sequence of these attacks. First, it was Kuje, and now we're talking about our last line of defense, so to speak. Why is the security situation degenerating?
Well, I can understand the concern and apprehension of all well-meaning Nigerians, particularly those residing in the Federal Capital Territory, based on the fact that the recent happenings are, unpalatable, so to speak, starting with the attack on the Correctional Service Center in Kuje, and now, most unfortunately, the casualty we sustained in Buhari local government area of the FCT. People rightly, they have every reason to be worried. More so, this is the seat of the government, and you thought that everything, when you talk about security, when you talk about the Federal Capital Territory, it ought to have been more scared than any other place. But of course, at the same time, again, it is not surprising given the fact, and I made mention of it, thankfully you made mention of the fact that we were here some time ago, and suffice to reiterate what we have been saying over time. Some of these things, yes, are not surprising simply because there are certain issues that need to be tackled that have not been tackled, and will continue to experience these problems. I talked about coordination. I talked about, synergy, and beyond that again. Every time we had security challenges, we only think of one thing, deploying the military. Don't we have other, component of the security architecture? And beyond that again, everything that we are experiencing hinge on the issue of good governance in this country. To what extent have we been addressing the good governance? Yes, because you cannot talk, every day we talk about security being a collective responsibility, everybody has a role to play. But have you empowered the people to play that role? These are the issues that we have to look at. Because if we have been doing that, some of these issues wouldn't have, degenerated to this extent. And even, yes, there is no society that is crime-free, but as soon as it happened, it can easily be nipped in the bud because everybody is, on it. So basically, this is the issue. But, the security education, then to what extent have you, empowered the Nigerian people, to perform that duty? Aside the security, those statutory responsible for the security, of the country or any given community or society.
Yeah, looking at these recent attacks, three of them specifically, some would say are targeted at a message, for instance. The issue of insecurity has been a regular occurrence in some states of the Federation, especially in the Northwest. It is no longer news to hear about in large numbers, killings and displacement of, rural communities and what have you. But these three attacks, the Kuje facility, the advanced convoy of President Muhammadu Buhari, and now the troops of the, brigades of guard. Some say are sending some strong signal to the seat of power that we are here and we are also very important. Do you see this message sinking with our authorities?
Well, given the response, you begin to wonder actually whether it is sinking or not. But the truth is that I think the problem we have to a large extent is that of communication gap. Yes, because I say communication gap because things are being done, but people hardly know what is being done. And I think within the security concern, there are some issues that need to be made to the public, so that they will be aware. Because an enlightened society is easier to help, in securing the society or the nation as it is. And at the same time, people will contribute more. But where you decide to keep quiet, take for instance, these things that have happened, it took such a long time when there was an official response, and it shouldn't be. So these are the issues and the circumstances that brought about these security challenges. And I always like to place any of the occurrence in the context that it has occurred. But if you lack the information, you hardly know. Because I will give you an example. There was a time when somebody raised concern that, bandits, stop motorists. No, somebody was, abducted along Kaduna Abuja Road. And I was asking where, when, but as time goes on, the story came that it was 8 o'clock in the night. And naturally, every right-thinking person, unless if you have supernatural powers,
especially
you cannot.
Especially in this contemporary situation,
yes, but that
before
is not
it was the right, it was even about the best time to
normally
travel.
You take dinner before you even think of traveling.
That's right.
So basically, these are some of the things. And, and almost everybody has a role to play, putting the story in a proper perspective as it happened. Right. But that is even for the public. Right. But for those that are the security agencies, particularly the intelligence community, to what extent are feeding the information so that it is being sieved for the public to take action and for the other security agencies or members of the security architecture should take action. So basically, these are the issues.
Right.
When you understand that, sometimes the level of apprehension could be less.
That's right.
And a lot of people have ideas they could have contributed so that some of these issues could be mitigated. Because, look, the greatest rallying point or selling point of the Nigerian society is the human resource that it has. It's incredible. People are full of ideas. We are the best if you can think. I mean, you can think of in this world.
That's right.
But of course, you cannot get the best out of the people unless certain people are in place.
Right. Okay, let's reach out to Bulama Bukarti. Bulama, looking at the situation we find ourselves today in Nigeria, some are beginning to think that we're losing the war, if you like. We're losing the fight to these non-state actors, especially now that they're being emboldened and, of course, taking certain, attacks, directly to the seat of power. Recently, they also made a threat, to even kidnap the president and governor of Kaduna State. Some say they are being emboldened, perhaps by the level of response they're getting from the government, and of course, their ability also to extort Nigerians to, because they are also milking millions of naira out of Nigerians. How would you respond to this situation?
I think it is right to say that the security situation in Nigeria is unfortunately deteriorating by the day. And we could look at incidents like the Abuja or Kuje attack or the other attacks we saw recently in Abuja and attempted attacks. But even when you look at the broader trend and pattern, you would see that this year is already becoming the deadliest year in the past 10 years. I know Kabiru Adamu would come, but he wouldn't mind me mention the figures. I was just coming from a workshop organized by his company, and the data they gathered shows that 6,698 Nigerians have been killed in the first 6 months of this year alone. And this is something I know Daily Trust has also reported on. If you looked at 6,698 people, that is over 1,116 people every single month. That's over 37 people every day. 37 people is 2-seater buses. The amount of people 2-seater, 18-seater buses accommodate are killed every single day in Nigeria, and 82% of this is in the northern part of Nigeria. Now, of course, there are other things the statistics show, and we can get to them when we have time. But to get to your question, there are two parts to why we are seeing this escalation. The first part is what you have alluded to, which is that the terrorists, the criminals, are still able to recruit. They are able to make a lot of money, and they are able to get all their supplies and logistics. Their arms and ammunitions are flooding in through the border without any problem. They are making money from ransom. The Abuja Kaduna attackers, according to Daily Trust reporting, have so far made 900 million naira. That's what we know of the 8 passengers that they released. We don't know how much was paid for the other passengers that were also released. So you could be right to say they have made almost 1 billion naira in just one operation, and they have not released over up to a half of those they abducted. So they are able to make money. Their weapons are flooding in. Their drugs are flooding in. Their food is clear, and therefore they are emboldened to continue. And that's why we see Boko Haram expanding, bandits expanding, and IPOP continuing its attack in the southeast. This is one part. The second part, which is emboldening them, is the fact that the government is totally. And if you want me to summarize the problem with Nigeria's security in 2 words, I would say leadership failure. If you want me to make it 3 words, I will say woeful leadership failure. Because the president is not providing the leadership that is needed. Now, Nigeria has 17 security and law enforcement agencies, but there is no one coordinating them. There is no strategy coordinating them, and therefore everyone is doing things on their own. And so you don't have leadership, no plan, no coordination, and therefore the situation continues to worsen, unfortunately.
Bukarti, some will say, you talk about leadership, which is very, very fundamental in, our ability to make any inroads. The president has been responding in a way. Each time we have such an attack, he summoned the security chiefs, and they sit down, look at the issues, re-strategize, and then life goes on. We're beginning to see this happen consistently. Even recently, I think within a week, they were able to sit, to look at the issues. But one thing that is lacking perhaps is the result. But this time around, we have been told that, the security agencies are coming up with new measures. Perhaps the existing measures are not yielding results. Some will say, yeah, it is obvious the fact that the dynamics are changing. We are beginning to see, multiplicity of ambushes, which is very, very critical. I mean, very deadly, so to speak. Looking at the nature of guerrilla warfare, don't you think, it is the complex nature of the security situation that is making it almost impossible for the result to be seen?
I mean, you talk about the president sitting with security or service chiefs. And you are right, the president has three default responses whenever there is an attack. He would express shock on Twitter or on other social media pages. He would gather the service chiefs, and we will see their photo on media pages, newspapers. And then the third thing we see is presidential spokespersons coming out to downplay the attack and to make empty promises. This is what we have seen for 7 years. And if sitting with security forces would work, we wouldn't have got to where we are getting. As you say, sitting with security forces in Abuja, all of them in Abuja, when your country is literally at war with itself, is outrageous in itself. But then when you are sitting in Abuja and no results on the ground, and you continue to maintain the same kinds of people, and so what you are doing is national embarrassment, and what you are doing is dereliction of duty, and it's a criminal dereliction of duty for that matter. What the president does after every attack is to gather the service chiefs for them to mark their own homework. And then they disperse. After another attack, he gathers them again, they mark their homework, and they disperse. That's not leadership. Expressing shock on social media is not leadership. Downplaying people's pains is not leadership. Leadership is taking responsibility. Leadership is developing a strategy. Leadership is implementing your strategy. Leadership is producing results, and that is what we have not seen in this president for the past 7 years. It's easy to forget that before Buhari became president, northern Nigeria did not know abductions. We did not know kidnappings in the northwest or the northeast before Buhari became president. Today, Nigeria is the country where kidnappings and abductions take place more than any other country of the world. How did we get to that? It is lack of leadership.
While you're making this point, Dr. Kabir Adamu, made his way into the studio. So I'll take him right direct, to that. You're welcome first.
Thank you very much, and my apologies for coming in late. Like Bukarti mentioned, we hosted another event.
That's right.
And it lasted a little bit longer than
right. Okay. Bukarti, just talking about leadership and leadership dereliction, which is very, very disturbing as it is. Fundamental responsibility of every government is to provide security of lives and property and to guarantee welfare. Perhaps that is the essence of a government. In a situation whereby governments fail, to provide these services, and yet, just like Bukarti has said, also not ready to take responsibilities. What kind of situation we get in this kind of circumstance?
Okay, first off, I would like to emphasize that I'm a technocrat. I try to avoid going into areas that are a little bit difficult to measure. So as an example, leadership, how do you measure leadership? How do you measure capabilities of a leader? So I would rather not go into that area. However, I will stick to what I know, which is security.
All right. Okay. Let me take you on that. We've been talking about deteriorating situation, especially with the recent developments, the kind of attacks we're getting or we're seeing, beyond, attacking the vulnerable communities and the sub-targets, terrorists are now emboldened to attack symbols of the state, threatening even the seat of power. Some will say, it doesn't just happen overnight. Over the years, since the decimation, if you like, of the Boko Haram insurgents in the northeast, there has been substantial warnings that terrorists are moving, northwest, so to speak. At some point, even the Brookings, talked about, that was in 2021, talks about the metamorphosis of this bandit elements, to terrorist organizations and their infiltration by the ISWAP and what have you. So it is enough to say we have sufficient, signals as to what we should expect. What happened to our response mechanism?
It died somewhere along the way, unfortunately. And as a people, I don't think we've realized that our response mechanism has died. We are the ones that are being affected. It's not, Nigerians or Ghanaians or from other countries. It's Nigerians, you and I, that are being affected. So I think the beginning point is to admit that as a people, we have not taken responsibility for our well-being and for our livelihood.
As a people, you mean the citizens or the leadership?
Yes, and I'll explain what I mean.
That's right.
It's okay for me to lament and point a finger at my president or my governor or my chairman, as the case may be. But how did that person come to power? What role did we participate? Are we not in a pre-election year? What role are we playing at the moment? We have representatives from across the spectrum. They are quote unquote representing us. How many of them come back home and we give them tumultuous welcome? All the persons that Bukarati has mentioned here, today, if they go back home, they will be welcomed by their people. At what point have we looked at them and told them that you are not representing us very well? So I think we have our share of responsibility. A few weeks ago, a media person was asking me a question and she went that Nigerians are angry. And my response was, no, we're not angry. Singapore, they are angry. And we've seen what they did. With Sudan, we're angry. We saw what they did. In our own case, our level of acceptance and tolerance is, frankly, it needs to be written about. Bread, which was selling for 250 naira per loaf, is going for 1,000 naira today, and we've accepted it as a people. Go to Egypt and add the equivalent of 5 naira to bread and see what will happen. So I think we need to, let's stop being the proverbial ostrich, where we hide our head and point and leave our whole body outside. We own part of that responsibility for allowing this situation. Bukarati mentioned it. 80%, over 80% of the fatalities and kidnapping that have occurred in Nigeria from January to June occurred in the north. Have we as a people come out to say enough is enough? It is our brothers and sisters that are being killed and abducted, but yet we are the same persons defending the same system that is killing us and that is leading to their abduction. So we have a share of that responsibility as a people. We need to wake up and agree among ourselves that enough is enough.
Yeah, but we're beginning to see some level of response, which might not be palatable again. The citizens are being pushed to the wall and they are beginning to rise up to the occasion. Some states, some national governments are considering arming the citizens.
I hate to interrupt.
Right.
Just 2 days ago, the INEC released the voter registration statistics. The North had the lowest. That says a lot. So even in the elections, we're likely to see a low voter turnout. That is an indication.
The level of apathy.
Apathy, and we're not yet angry. If we're angry, we'll go and get our voters card. We'll be mobilizing. And I must commend you, Daily Trust, for what you are doing. Other organizations need to pick up that. We need to mobilize our citizens to go out, get their voters card, and participate. I'm not advocating for any unlawful response. Rather, democratic response, appreciation of your right as a citizen. The best way to express that is during the vote. But please, let's go back to...
Okay, the basis. Okay, looking at why we are where we are today. You talked about the statistics and why they are prevalent in the northern part of the country. We also know that there are a lot of fault lines, that perhaps trigger some of these reactions. Talking about the indices of poverty, the level of poor governance that we have here, and of course the ungoverned spaces. Substantially, Bukati was talking about the movement of arms and ammunition, how they flow into the country freely. Our borders with Nigeria is porous, so to speak. Other countries are able to at least secure their borders, to, stop this infiltration. Take, for instance, when the governor of Niger State was talking about the infiltration of the ISWAP elements into Niger State along the border of Benin Republic. He said they couldn't move into Benin Republic because the border is properly secured. So they hibernate around that. And we're beginning to see the manifestation of their hibernation there. What happened to, what role are security agencies playing, in stopping first the shipments, if you like, the movements of the arms, which is fundamental. It's part of the lifeline of these non-state actors. What do you make up with our ability to secure the borders in the first place?
Zero, frankly. We are not doing good enough. That's not to say there are no mechanisms here and there. Remember, this government actually shut down the border under an operation that was led by the Office of the National Security Advisor. But has it been effective? Unfortunately, if going by the fact that we still have weapons in circulation, and in fact the sophistication of the weapons are increasing, we say that operation was not successful. But let's go back to even the basics. As far back as I think 14 or 15 years ago, ECOWAS came out with a recommendation to its member state to set up a commission for mopping up small arms and light weapons. Today, Nigeria is the only country in the sub-region that has not set up that commission. Are we really a serious country? Now, this current administration under President Buhari went ahead, perhaps out of frustration with the way this issue is being managed, and has appointed someone to commandeer the activities of, I don't know what to call it right now. It's a department in the Office of the National Security Advisor. A bill has been sent to the National Assembly. That bill, under the 8th Assembly, it went through the entire process, and I think it reached second reading, and unfortunately died in its natural death because that assembly's lifespan expired. Now, the same thing is about to happen in this 9th Assembly. That bill has reached second reading. And the assembly has gone on recess. By the time they come back, they'll start thinking about re-election.
So it is imperative to prioritize such bills.
Exactly.
Because of the importance
exactly.
they have.
And let's be fair, let's not pin it to this administration. Like I said, 15 years back was when ECOWAS mooted that such a commission should have. All other countries in the sub-region have that. Nigeria is the only one that does not have it at the moment.
Right. Okay, General, coming back to the theater of operation, things are also changing. The dynamics are changing. We are dealing with an asymmetric kind of warfare, which is very difficult to deal with. We have non-state actors who hibernate among the citizens and what have you, who engage in ambushes, and then also being supported, if you like, by, I don't know, perhaps whether it's an allegation. Some say within the security architecture, there are also fifth columnists who, in most cases, provide intelligence information. Take, for instance, what happened in Buhari. The troops were said to have been responding, to a distress call on a possible attack on the law school, and suddenly they came under attack. Some say without sort of, information from within, they wouldn't have known such a response is coming. And they strategically positioned, to take on our security forces. How are we managing this issue of, first intelligence sharing and utilization? Even the response, some say, is faulty. We shouldn't go, to respond to a distress call without necessarily surveying and, mapping out the strategies that the best suit that intervention. How would you respond to this?
Well, first and foremost, when you talk about issue of fifth columnists, and it may not necessarily be so, and I have mentioned it time without number, that the concept of war economy is real, especially in the present circumstances we found ourselves. I think the Commissioner of Information in Zamfara State has a new, he said, is it crisis match entrepreneurs?
Yes, crisis entrepreneurs.
So,
They're actually there.
The
Conflict merchants.
The issue is that a lot of people are benefiting from this unfortunate security situation we found ourselves. But it is the duty of who are those that are responsible to know who are those people that are benefiting. And I gave you an example the other time. The statistics reeled out by Beacon Consultants, and in respect of the ransom money paid within the last 1 month or thereabout, getting to almost ₦1 trillion. Now, bulk of those people that are doing this abduction, they are not, so to speak, staying in the cities.
Yes,
So how do you think that they will be going about with 1 billion naira in the bush? Even if it is 5 million, in fact, even if it is 2 million. So that raises a fundamental question. Somewhere, somehow, somebody is also benefiting, is also in the line. It's just like coupling of IED. By the time an IED is detonated, there are other 10 people along the line before detonation. So whenever you have this issue, you have chain of people that benefit from that. Is it the negotiator? Is it those people that bank the money for them or invest the money for them? And what are we doing about it? Now, so I'm just looking at the issue of fifth columnists. So it might not necessarily be so. And there were several instances, even among the society. It happened in Shiroro, it happened in Katsina, and elsewhere several times in Zamfara State. Troops or security agencies will receive a distress call. Maybe it is, maybe, let's say, somewhere east. And unfortunately, it is just a ploy, a decoy to divert their attention. Meanwhile, the thing is taking place in the west. So it is not always so, unless we found out. And some of these people are so unfortunate. They are, within the society. But up to now, we have not come up with a mechanism to deal with this issue. Right. But it goes back to what we have been saying time without number. You have the 3 tiers of government. Only 2 tiers are working. The local government system is not working. So right from day one, getting the right information, looking at the people, you have a faulty foundation. Right. So that and many other things brought about the issue you are talking about. And it goes back to good governance, it goes back to security education, it goes back to taking responsibility on these issues.
Yeah, an aspect of it has not been addressed anyway. We'll come back, and that is when we come back, when we get across to Bukati. That is the aspect of our response to distress calls and how we do it. Sometimes also left much to be desired. But let me take on Bukati. Bukati, talking about the conflict merchants and the beneficiaries of this conflict. General was talking about, the value chain, so to speak. People are benefiting and so on and so forth. Recently, there was a revelation, from one of the abductors, the abducted passengers of the train attack along Abuja Road, those the people that took the money to the bandits, so to speak, or the terrorists, so to speak, talked about a very disturbing scenario where some security personnel had to intercept them and even collect their part of the share. They call it part of the share, because they got to the point of delivery and they were not questioned the fact that the money is not completed. All they need to say is that certain people have taken part of it. I don't know how credible is that information, but then this also shows, or rather confirm, what General and other people are talking about. But what happened to our deterrence measures? This has been happening over time. A number of people have been, either apprehended or, found to be culpable in some of these dealings. But yet, no one has been brought to book. no one has been shown the way out, if it is about among the security personnel and so on. I wouldn't want to say that the military doesn't have a mechanism of addressing such, perhaps it has been doing. But how are you looking at the situation with this, complaints around people benefiting from the crisis?
Yeah, I mean, the question of money in criminality everywhere in the world is a reality. But in the case of Nigeria, what you have is a whole industry. It's more than just a value chain. It's a whole industry. And the kidnapping industry, unfortunately, has become the most lucrative business in Nigeria. We are talking about people who, according to Daily Trust reporting, which I know to be credible, have received at least 900 million naira in one operation in under 2 months. I mean, in under 3 months. Now, under 4 months, we should say, because it's over 100 days. Now, no business in Nigeria. I don't know any bank in Nigeria that makes 900 million naira in under 4 months without any substantial investment. But we also know that it's not just families that are paying, as we see in this case. We know police officers have been abducted, they have paid money. We know road safety officers have been abducted and they had to pay money. And so the kidnappers, the criminals, the terrorists are making huge amounts of money, unbelievable sums of money. And then it is what they use then to fuel their criminality and their violence. And therefore it goes down the value chain. You have drug dealers pushing in drugs into the country, they get their shares. You have gun dealers, they get their shares. You have informants, they get their shares. If there are rogue security operators, one around the value chain is, or in the industry, is benefiting from it. And so, and unfortunately, this is on just one part. On the other part, you have a government that is budgeting and disbursing billions of naira or even trillions that are never accounted for. The National Security Advisor, the current National Security Advisor, of money as long as well as the middlemen. Now, on the question of deterrence, I mean, it's the most important question. And when you talk about deterrence, there are deterrence on 3 levels. You are talking about the long term, the medium term, and the short term. And even measures, the best deterrence measure is for you to block their supply routes. So they cannot get weapons, they cannot get drugs, they cannot get the ultra powerful motorcycles that they use, and they cannot get other logistics. Now, the guns, the motorcycles, and the drugs that they are using, none of them is made in Nigeria. What is our immigration and customs services doing? What are they doing? Why are our borders so porous that you can smuggle in anything? Now, if you continue to have this supply route coming in and you are deceiving yourself that you are getting on top of the situation, it is like your bath has overflown with water and the tap is running. And then you get a cup and you start scooping the water while the tap is still running. You will keep scooping and the water will continue to flood your toilet and until the end of time. And therefore, the flow of this equipment. Someone spoke about, early response or early warning, or even, distress call. It speaks to a broader point, the point of our failure to use technology in this war. Countries are using the most advanced technology to fight criminality and terrorism. But what we find in Nigeria, until today, the Nigerian military and the Nigerian police that have several operations or many operations across the country, until today, you do not have a functioning emergency call line in Nigeria. So if your village is being attacked, who do you call? I mean, it's a situation in complete shamble. And I completely understand when Dr. Kabiru Adamu said he doesn't want to speak on leadership failure because there are no metrics, but there are metrics. He mentioned our response mechanism dying. He says our border are open and we don't see results. What is the results? What is the results? Where there are no results and there is nobody being held accountable, there is no one taking responsibility, you know that there is no leadership.
Dr. Kabir, talking about de-incentivizing, the industry, so to speak, that we have, which is very fundamental. Until people begin to see that it doesn't pay to engage in crime, people will continue to to join the bandwagon. And we're beginning to see that even happen, especially because of the recruitment line, which is, being enabled by the 4 times we talk about the poverty, the unemployment and what have you. How do we de-incentivize the industry?
This question is 101 in criminology. Honestly, it's a question you ask someone who is starting his BSc course in criminology. Yes, there is what is called the crime triangle. It has 3 components. The desire of the offender to carry out that offense, and then the target itself, the availability of that target, and then the benefit he or she is going to get from that crime. So in policing or in fighting crime, you just tweak these 3 things. Now, in this instance, how do we incentivize? We pick each and every one of them. Now, I always give the example of a young Fulani man who inherited, let's say, 4 cows at the age of 13 and decided to dedicate 10 years of his life to cater for those 4 cows. And after those 10 years, they multiply into maximum 10 or even 15. And let's put the best value per cow at 450,000 naira, yeah? Or 600,000, and multiply it by 10. How much is he going to get? 6 million, yeah? And then all the extortions, the taxes and everything. So at the end of the day, maybe he gets 4.5 million. Now the same young Fulani guy who goes into abduction and commits like the type that we are just discussing, and his group ends up getting 900 million naira, and he gets probably 10% of that. Now you do the calculation. And that is why when Rufai said he doesn't want to negotiate with them, given what has happened, the industry that has created, it would take a lot. We need to tweak all of these 3 things. Our criminal justice system, both at the traditional level up to the federal level, will have to be strengthened. All offenders, irrespective of their tribes, their ethnicity, their religion, would have to be arrested and punished. Anything short of that, we're not incentivizing criminality in the country. We can pick each or the other elements and talk about them. But my point is, this is simple. Every person in security who has gone through criminology can pick that 101 of criminology and do it. Now I worry. We get criticized when we appear on media platforms and give this advice. They call us tourists. And I'm challenging them. Give us the chance. What I am saying is something that someone in first year university in criminology knows very well. But we're not implementing that.
Right. Okay, how do we summon the political will, to begin to address, if you like, or implement some of these measures? Because some would say what is lacking is perhaps the will, to deal with the situation head on.
But the how is already there. Okay. There are modalities, but the problem is that following their modalities. So, and I made reference to the issue of governance. And there is no way you can divorce these security challenges without making reference to issue of governance, good governance in this country, and at a various level. Now, if you are talking about that, and picking from where Kabiru has left off, now, what are the other alternatives, for an average Nigerian youth not to go into venture of this nature? What are the safeguards? What are the available, facilities that will make him or her aspire to become whatsoever he or she wants to become in life. So these are the starting point.
Okay.
And basically, there are things that are just basic or bare necessities of life.
Right. Okay. Instead of addressing this fundamental problem you're talking about, we're beginning to see some measures that some say could be misplacement of priorities. For instance, the government is contemplating banning this Okada ride, motorcycle operators across the country, and some say, this is a lifeline to millions of youths who, are unemployed, and they find that as an alternative, just like you're talking about. Wouldn't this, rather confound the situation instead of addressing it? Let me get your take.
Yeah, basically, of course, thankfully you have gauged the public opinion and you have heard what the people are saying. Given the instances of such bans, what was the outcome? In fact, it is not just motorcycle, but even flight bans and all the rest of, in the conflict-prone areas. What was the outcome? Shutting of telecommunication. Possibly the information is not yet clear for somebody to make judgment. Is it for how long? And what are the modalities? But under the present circumstances, you are just holding, the means of livelihood of law-abiding Nigerians and encouraging the criminals, because this ban, to a large extent, will not even affect them. I hope you understand. So basically, these are the issues. Maybe we need to have a rethink. Unless, of course, the modalities are made known to us. The period of time and what will be what will they be doing?
Should we
within
even
that
contemplate it in the first place? Should we contemplate doing so in a situation we find ourselves?
Well, usually when it's a desperate situation require desperate measures, and part of the desperate measures, but I think it is not the best. There are other alternatives that we can think of.
Right. Okay. Let's get to Bukarti. As of course we're rounding up. Bukarti, looking at the triggers, we talked about what is providing lifeline for this insecurity prevailing in our country. And in northern part of the country, for instance, they've been talking about the mining activities, the rural economy, which has now been completely crippled and all of that. How do we, get out of the woods as we, we progress in our nation building?
Yeah, it's the most important question in this conversation. What is the way forward? And I think the last point the general made in your conversation speaks to the answer. Unfortunately, if you want to get anywhere in this, in the current world, you have got evidence. You have got to, base your policy on evidence, and evidence requires investment in research out of the box. If you look at every major policy this government has announced in the last 3 years to tame this crisis, is a measure that is based on conspiracy theories. In Zamfara, they said people are dropping weapons from jets and therefore they have banned jets. They banned telecommunication and shut down markets. They banned mining activities, but none of those have reduced anything. And if you talk about motorcycle has been banned in the northeast, in Borno and Yobe for 7 years, and Boko Haram is still operating. Motorcycle is already banned in Zamfara. What has that reduced? Now, if you want to ban motorcycles, for example, you could ban motorcycles in affected areas if you are able to enforce it against the criminals, against the terrorists. But if you ban motorcycle in the whole of Nigeria, because people there are millions of Okada riders in Nigeria who will be deprived of their livelihood. Millions of people go to their farms, to schools, to markets on their motorcycles. If you ban it, you are going to just exacerbate the situation. And this is how elites think. Everything that doesn't affect them, they can ban it. Otherwise, how many attacks have been launched with cars? Why are we not banning cars? Because Buhari is using cars, because ministers are using cars, so they cannot ban cars. But Okada, motorcycles, they don't use them. Their children don't use them. They don't know the pain of people who are using them if they don't have motorcycles. And that's why they can sit in Abuja and ban motorcycles. The short answer I would give to your way forward is for government to base its policies on knowledge, on research, on deep thinking, and to craft or develop policies together with experts, but not just crafting policy, implementing the policy.
Right. Thank you
Use
very much.
technology well,
Thank you
secure
very
our
much,
borders,
Well,
work with
Bulama.
our neighbors, flush out corruption in our security sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Bukarti. Let me get your last line, Dr. Kabir. What do we need to prioritize to get out of this situation?
Okay, before then, let me just correct an
Very
impression
quickly. Because
we have an emergency phone line. Exactly. I think the 112. It's hosted by the...
And it's effective.
It's effective.
Army has 193.
And I think there was a meeting today between the Army Ministry of Communications to launch and strengthen what they have.
The 193 works.
It's not yet completely there, but it's there. So I think we need to...
Okay, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. What do we need to do?
Very quickly.
We have good strategies. We have good policies. The challenge is in implementation. So we need to look closely at why we would come up with beautiful documents and yet we don't implement them. We have a Terrorism Prevention Act. We have a counter-terrorism strategy. We have named them cybersecurity strategy. We've got the revised national security strategy. But
so implementation is debate.
And I think there are two parts of government that need to play a role. I'll quickly mention them: the coordinating elements within the security architecture, and then the National Assembly. They can help us in this.
Thank you very much, General. Your last slide, very quickly, maybe 30 seconds.
Possibly, I think we have to, the issue of going back to the basis, we just have to improve the well-being of the Nigerian society so that...
Human capital development.
Exactly. Okay. And make our, tiers of government work.
That's right.
Then, most importantly, we also have to invest in technology and carry everybody along.
Right. Thank you very much, retired Brigadier General Sani Usman Kuka Sheka, for your perspectives, Dr. Kabir Adamu for your perspectives, and Bulama Bukarti, we also appreciate your thoughts on the platform. On behalf of the guests and the technical crew, my name is Shafiu Suleiman. Have yourself a wonderful time ahead.